In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at dilations on a coordinate plane. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about. Notice at the top left, we have something to fill in. And basically it says that the variable k represents the scale factor, which you multiply your values by. If k is less than 1, the preimage shrinks. If k is greater than 1, it grows. So that's the rule, and that's what we're going to see occur. If k is basically less than 1, we're going to see the image get smaller. Notice if k is greater than 1, then that means it's going to get bigger. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the rule right here. Notice our rule, our dilation rule, it says multiply by k. So our original ordered pair will have an x value, will have a y value. And all we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking k and multiplying it to our x value and to our y value. Notice, for instance, here, this example, it says k is equal to 1/2. Therefore, we multiply 1/2 to x, and we multiply 1/2 to y. And in this case, notice this shrink is k is less than 1. And so, in other words, when we multiply by 1/2, this was a shrink, or what we call a reduction. So I want you to add that word in here real quick, because on the stars, sometimes they'll call it a reduction. And notice in this one it says k equals 2. Well, that means it's going to grow because k is greater than 1. We also call that an enlargement. So I want you to write the word enlargement right there. And notice this shows that number 2, which is k, in front of x, which means it's x's coefficient. That just means the multiplier. So we're multiplying 2 to x, and we're multiplying 2 times y. And that's all we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to show you how to set these up to do them in a really simple fashion that makes dilations very simple. Let's go ahead and look at our first problem over here. Notice our first problem, right? We call that problem fun, right? We have a triangle here, F-U-N. So with that being said, the first thing that we want to do whenever we see that we're given k is we want to go ahead and write what we call an algebraic rule. Our rule is basically just what we're going to be doing to our ordered pairs once we get them. So for instance, this says k is equal to 2. So when I write my rule, I am going to be putting k, the value of k, I'm going to be writing it in pink so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. And I'm going to write my rule down here at the bottom. I want you to write it underneath this graph. And when we write it, what we're going to say is that x and y is going to create a change to our ordered pair. And that is going to be, we're going to take that value of 2 and we're going to multiply that to our x value. And then we're going to take that value of 2 again, and we're going to multiply it to our y value. And that's all there is to it. So I have written an algebraic rule knowing what k is, right? This is basically kx, comma, kx. But instead of a k, since I know it's equal to 2, I put a 2 in its place. So now let's go ahead and write our ordered pairs. Now when you do this, the easiest way I found to do this to prevent any confusion is to go ahead and write out each letter. So for instance, this is point F. And I'm going to write the ordered pair for F. And I'm going to say, okay, well, from origin, I go to the left 1, 2. So my x value is negative 2 because I went to the left 2 times. And then up 1. So I'll put a 1. Now, for those of you sometimes that get the positive and negative mixed up, remember, if from origin you go to the left, it's going to be negative values. From origin, if you go to the right on x-axis, they're going to be positive values. And from origin, if you go up on the y-axis, those are positive y values. And if you go down, it's going to be negative y values. So you can put those negative signs and positive signs if that helps you. Now here's the thing. Leave space here because we're going to do f prime underneath it. And remember, f prime just means, it means that f, once it's been modified by that scale factor. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to write f prime right here. We'll have new values there. And let's go ahead and move to u. So here's u. From origin, I go to the left 1. So for u, I'm going to say it's negative 1 on my x value. And then I go up 1, 2. And so positive 2. And then I'm going to leave some space for me to do u prime, which is my new ordered pair that's undergone transformation. And let's go ahead and find n. So for n, we go to the right. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to say, okay, for my x value for n, we have positive 3. And then from there, we go up 1. So a positive 1. and then we're going to write n prime. Now, I did leave some space there, and there was intentionally, right, because we're going to do some math. Notice I said that you're just going to be multiplying the scale factor of 2, right, which is your k, times the x, and then 2 times the y. So what I like to do is just do math top to bottom and just put a little multiplication sign and say that's times 2, times 2. So negative 2 times positive 2 gives me a negative 4. 1 times 2 gives me a positive 2, and that's my f prime. So if you do it top to bottom like this, it makes it really simple. And you can use your calculator to do the math if you want. Like when we multiply that fraction, I'm not going to do that in my head. I'll just use the calculator. But let's go and look at u. So for u, right, we're going to multiply that times 2. This 2 we're going to multiply by 2. Negative 1 times 2 gives me negative 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4. That's u prime. And I'm going to multiply this one by 2 and that one by 2. 3 times 2 gives me 6. 1 times 2 gives me 2. And that's my n prime. That's really all there was to it. Very simple, right? Very basic. So now that we got that done, let's go ahead and plot these new points. If we look at f prime, it's negative 4, 2. So I'll start here, and I'll go to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up 2, 1, 2. Now I want you to notice, right, this point f, notice it kind of moved up over here, right? So this is f prime. Now, I want you to keep in mind that 2 is greater than 1. So we have an enlargement. That means this little bitty triangle, right, it's going to spread out and get bigger. So sometimes the points will shift and move around just a little bit like that. But once you plot all of them, it should be the same exact shape. It's just been expanded. So u prime is negative 2, 4. So I'll go over 2, then go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to be u prime. And then n prime is 6, 2. So I'm going to go to the right 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then up twice. 1, 2. And I'm going to go ahead and put a dot right there and say that's n prime. Now, all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to go ahead and connect the dots. So notice, right, there we go. Connect these. And I'll go ahead and connect this one way over here. Alright, so you can see right here, my shape, right, it grew. Not only did it grow, it grew 2 times, right? K equal 2, that means that it grew twice as big. So this new shape that I have right here is twice as big, but notice it's the same shape. Nothing changed as far as the shape goes, other than it got larger. So now you know how to do dilations. So we did a dilation where it grows. Let's do one where it shrinks, right? This one over here, notice this 1/2. This is going to be a reduction. So reduction. And actually on this one we knew it got bigger, so let's write enlargement beside it. Enlargement. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do this one together, and then I'm going to have you do this last one on your own and see how well you do with it. I'm going to start as usual. I'm going to go ahead and write our rule down here in the bottom. Actually, you know what? I'll do it in the top. There's more space in the top. So let's say x and y, draw our little arrow, and then we're going to say, well, our scale factor is 1/2, so it's going to actually be 1/2 times my x value, and then I'm going to have 1/2 times my y value, and there's my rule. So if it just asked me to give a rule when given the scale factor, I'd say, well, this is my algebraic rule because I'm going to be multiplying x by 1/2 and y by 1/2. Now I know that's going to be a reduction, so the shape is going to stay the same, but it's going to get smaller. So let's go ahead and write our ordered pairs. And notice in this one, right, we have the word math, M-A-T-H. So I'm going to start with M so that I can write the word math. And I'm going to say M is right here. Here's my ordered pair. And then we're going to do some math, right? And we're going to have an M prime. And let's go ahead and do A now. So we have A. And I always write these out ahead of time before I actually start doing the math and make sure that I don't forget a point. At least for me. And I hope that it does the same for you. So we got T. Alright, I'm going to write the other one kind of Over here, let's see, well, we got an H. So let's go ahead and put the H there. All right, and we have H prime. Okay, there's all of our ordered pairs. So we're going to go ahead, put the commas on them. And we'll start with M. So if I want to find M, right? So I'm going to start from origin. I go to the left, 1, 2, 3. And so for M, it's -3, because we went to the left 3 times. And then I go up 1. So that's 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and find A. So from A, I go over 1. And I go up 1, 2, 3. So 1, 3. For T, I go over 1, 2, and I go down 1, 2. So that's 2, and then -2, because we went down 2. For H, I go to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's -4. And then I'm going to go down 1, 2. -2. All right, I got all my ordered pairs. Now we're going to multiply all these by 1/2, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say, well, it's -3 times 1/2. This is times 1/2. Now, I have to write really small to fit a half in there. So for the rest of these, I'm just going to put 0.5, because I know 0.5 is the same as 1/2. So times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. All right. Now I'm going to write all my answers in as soon as I do that work with the calculator, because like I said, I'm not going to do that one in my head. So let's go in and get the calculator. Alright, so for calculate, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to take my x value of -3, and I'm going to multiply that times my k, which is 1/2. Now, here's what happens if you don't convert it to a decimal. It gives you a improper fraction. And that's perfectly fine. If you want to write an improper fraction in there, that's fine with me. But me personally, I just like decimals. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a decimal. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. You could have either said 1/2 and said that's 0.5 times -3. But sometimes you won't get a clean number. You might have like a weird scale factor like 7/16 or something. It's possible. And you're going to have this maybe repeating decimal. But what I would end up doing if it was me, I would just say -3. I would go ahead and multiply that times my fractional value, whatever they give you on the STAR test or on my assessment, and put a decimal after the denominator. And when you do that, it automatically converts it to a decimal. So -3 times 1/2 is just -1.5. The other one is 1 times 1/2. And I know a lot of you are going, you know what, Mr. H, we know that 1 times anything is itself, so we know that that would just give us 0.5. But just for those who want to put it in a calculator, nothing wrong with it. You have a calculator, and if you want to punch it in just to confirm, that's perfectly fine. I do it all the time. So notice our values have changed from -3 for the x value to -1.5. And it's changed from +1 for the y value to +0.5. So let's go ahead and document those. All right, so my m prime is going to be -1.5, and then my y value is going to be 0.5. Now, of course, I left the 0 off in front of it, but it's not important to write it. As long as I know that just means a half. Now, if I wanted to plot this right, I would just go like in half increments. In other words, if I went from 0 to 1, that's 1, right? If I wanted to go a half mark, I would just go to the middle of it. But I'm not going to plot it now. I recommend that you always convert all your points first, then plot them at the same time. I realized that when working with my students, the students who do them one at a time and plot them one at a time, they tend to make more mistakes than my students who actually convert all of them and then just plot them at the same time. I don't know why that is necessarily. I don't tend to have that problem, but I see a lot of students do. So I recommend that you convert them all first, then go over and plot them on the axis. So let's go ahead and do our next one, right? For A, we have 1 and 3. So let's get our calculator out and do that. So I have 1 and 3, right? So we already know that 1 times 1/2 is just going to give us 1/2. And then we have a +3, right? So, okay, well, +3 times 1/2 times 1/2. Remember, always put that decimal there, and it gives you 1.5. Now, some of you may be looking at it going, I already knew that was going to be 1.5, Mr. H, because earlier we did -3 times 1/2, and it gave us -1.5. And that is something I have noticed even on STAR tests. A lot of times, the fractional values that they'll give you, you'll have answers that kind of repeat. You may just have one that's negative and one that's positive. So there's my new ordered pair. It went from 1, 3 to 0.5, 1.5. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them too. So for instance, for t, we had 2 and negative 2. So okay, so if I do 2 times, and I do 1/2, it gives me 1. And then I know the other one was negative 2, right? Well, negative 2 times 1/2 is just going to give me negative 1. But I just want to show it to you, so that way you can get practice doing this in case you don't have numbers that are this easy. So my ordered pair changed from 2, negative 2 to 1, negative 1. Now our last one. Our last one was we had negative 4 times 1/2. And then we had negative 2 times 1/2. Oh, you know what? Look at that. I put 0.2. Gotta watch that. Alright, so we'll do that again. So let's say we have negative 2 times 1/2. There we go. Alright, so that one, negative 4, negative 2, turned into negative 2, negative 1. Let's go ahead and we're going to write all our ordered pairs because I have all my answers in here now. Alright, so for instance, our 1 and 3, our 1 turned into 0.5, our 3 turned into 1.5, so that's our A prime. So I'm going to go ahead and box these two as I'm done with them. I recommend that you do that. I do that. Otherwise, sometimes I start getting numbers mixed up. So boxing really helps me not look at it again and not mix it up. 2 times half, that gave me 1, and negative 2 times a half gave me a negative 1. So that was T prime. Negative 4 times a half gave me negative 2. Negative 2 times a half gave me a negative 1. And that was H prime. Alright, so we have all of our numbers, right? So let's go ahead and plot them now. So M prime is at negative 1.5, comma 0.5. So I'm going to start from origin. I'll go over 1, and then I'll go over a half mark. So what I consider a half, which is right in the middle. And then my, and look, that's actually negative, right? So I'm sorry, I should have went to the left. 1, and then a half. And so this is going to be M. Now notice that the Y value is 0.5, which means I only go up halfway. So right there. So point's dead in the center. And I'm going to go ahead and write right there, M prime. For A prime, I have 0.5 and 1.5, and they're both positive. So I'm going to go a half mark to the right, and then I'm going to go up 1, and then a half. And that's going to be A prime. And then for T prime, I have 1 and negative 1. So positive 1, and then down 1. Okay, T prime. And then for H prime, I have negative 2, negative 1. So over 2 to the left, and down 1. And I'm going to go ahead and put H prime right there. So now that I got that done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to draw my shape. Now, the last one I did by hand. I think I did kind of a crummy job. I'm going to use my protractor this time to make it really straight. All right. And there you go. Now I am going to shade this in. This is the new shape that I just done. And what I want you to notice is that it is half the size of the original. And if you go Mr. H, it looks like it might be half the size, but how do you know for certain? Well, we reduced its size by 1/2, right? That was our scale factor. K was equal to 1/2. So we know that it is literally half the size of the original shape. So now that you know how to do that, I want you to go ahead and I want you to try to do this one on your own. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do it in this video, but I want you to pause the video, follow the same steps that we just did on this last problem, and just see if you can get it right on your own. Then hit play and see what I got. On this problem right here, I'm going to go ahead and write my algebraic rule right in the top. It's the first thing that we should always be doing before we even start. So I got x and y. And notice for my k value, I have 1/4, which can also be said as 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and write that 1/4, and it's going to be times my x values that I get. And then I'm also going to multiply 1/4 to my y values that I get. And then on top of here, I recognize that this is a value less than 1, and since k is less than 1, it's a reduction. So above it, I want to write the word reduction. Now, we just got to find our ordered pairs for the word, or the shape, I should say, P-L-A-Y, right? And that spells play. So let's go ahead and write all those ordered pairs down. So I'm going to start with the word, or the letter I should say, P. So right here I have P, and I'm going to put my ordered pair, leave some space, and then I'm going to do P prime. I'm going to leave some space on here. P prime. There we go. And then we'll do L. Alright, so I'm going to write me an L. And then we'll leave some space and do L prime. And we have A. We'll leave some space and we have A prime. And we have Y. So I'm hoping that as you're doing this, you're going, you know what, this is actually pretty easy. So I've taught this many different ways, and I'll be honest with you, this way that I'm teaching you right now, I feel like is the most effective, the easiest way to do this. So let's go ahead and start with P. We got to find P's location. So we always start from that O, which is origin, where the two axes cross, the X and Y. It's a 0, 0. And we go to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to say, okay, well, P is going to be negative 4 on the X value. And then I go up, 1, 2. So it'll be 2 on the Y. For L, I go to the right, 1, 2. Then I go up, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for A, I go to the right, 1, 2. And then I go down, 1, 2, 3, 4. So negative 4. And then for the Y, I go over 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be negative 4 because we went to the left 4. And then we're going to go down 1, 2. Alright, and that's going to be a negative 2. So now we got all of them. What we need to do now is just go ahead and do our math. Now keep in mind we're going to be multiplying all these ordered pairs, right, by 1/4. So times 1/4, 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 times 1/4. And I am going to ask you, I know a lot of you are really good at arithmetic and you're really good at multiplying these fractions. You can say, Mr. H, I can do this in my head. But do me a favor, I do ask that you would please use the calculator as you're doing these, just to double check, right? Because let's face it, you could get all of them right and just mess up on one ordered pair and then get the wrong answer. So please do use your calculators to multiply all these out with these fractional values just to make sure that you get it absolutely perfect. And I'm going to go to my calculator and do all of these at one time, and then we're going to come back and just write the ordered pairs in. So for that first one, we had negative 4 times 1/4. So because P is negative 4 comma 2, right? So our X value is negative 4. I'm going to multiply that times 1/4. And that gives me 1. And then I have 2. I'm going to multiply that times 1/4. And it gives me 0.5. So let's write those in. So I have negative 1 and 0.5. And that's P prime. Let's do the next one. 2 times 1/4. And then we had 4 times 1/4. So we have 0.5 and 1. So 0.5 and 1. That's L prime. And we have 2 times 1/4. And we have negative 4 times 1/4. So that's going to be 0.5 and negative 1. Now on this last one, I'm not even going to use my calculator because I'm like, well, we're multiplying really the same numbers. I'm either multiplying 2 or 4. So if negative 4 was negative times 1/4 was negative 1, well then negative 4 times 1/4 here is also going to be negative 1. And if we look at 2 times 1/4 is 0.5, well then negative 2 times 1/4 is just going to be negative 0.5. And I am done. I have all of my primes, right? So in other words, we made this shrink. It's only going to be 25% of the same size, or 1/4 the size, or 1/4 the size, depending on how you want to say it. So let's go ahead and plot them. So P prime is at -1 and 0.5. So here I go over 1 time to the left, and then 0.5 means to go halfway up, because that was a positive 0.5. So we go up on the y-axis. And that's P prime. L prime was 0.5 and 1. So we go over a half and then up 1. L prime. A prime was 0.5 and -1, 0.5 and down 1. Alright, so there we are. And that's going to be A prime. So ignore that one. And then we had Y prime is -1 and -0.5. Okay, so -1 and -0.5. So I'm going to go right here. So -1, -0.5, and that's going to be Y prime. Alright, so let's go ahead and connect these lines. Alright, there's that section. Alright, and I'm going to shade this in so there's no confusion about where the shape is, especially since I made that extra dot on accident. Alright, there you go. If you look, that is the same shape, right? But it's been reduced by 1/4. So it's only 25% the size of the original figure.